Part 27. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the God-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 261. Tell them that we still have a chance to talk when we come to Chang'an City. If you don't come, you will tacitly agree to fight to the death with us, Long Han. I believe that when they see Yao Tang's fate, they will definitely make a choice. After the explanation was completed, Lu Jin asked the generals and advisors to start connecting Chang'an City and Qianlong City. First, Lu Jin set up a teleportation altar in the palace in Chang'an City. With the teleportation altar in place, Qianlong City's materials and troops can be continuously transported to Chang'an City. Then, with the troops and supplies, they can start from Chang'an City and spread to the surrounding areas, bringing the entire Demon Tang territory under Long Han's command. After arranging everything, Lu Jin also obtained the location of the Demon Tang Emperor's tomb. The location of the Demon Tang Emperor's tomb is extremely secret, located in the mountains near Chang'an City. There were originally many guards near the imperial tomb. But because the Long Han army was approaching Chang'an City, the monarch of Tang dynasty simply dispatched all these guards back. If the city of Chang'an was destroyed, it would not matter whether the imperial mausoleum existed or not. Now, looking at the gate of the imperial mausoleum in front of him, Lu Jin thought to himself. The arrangement of the Demon King of Tang was actually advantageous to Lu Jin. Taking out the key to the imperial mausoleum, Lu Jin realized at this moment that the gate of the imperial mausoleum resonated with the key to the imperial mausoleum. The groove on the door exactly corresponds to the outline of the key to the imperial tomb. Lu Jin decisively put the key in, and with a tremor, the gate of the imperial mausoleum suddenly fell. Flames lit up on both sides of the road, and Lu Jin walked straight into it without any hesitation. Not long after, he arrived at the tomb of the Demon Tang Emperor. The sight in front of him made Lu Jin couldn't help but sigh. What a grand gesture! The huge imperial mausoleum is like an underground city, with hundreds of thousands of terracotta warriors and horses placed among thousands of tombs. These terracotta warriors and horses are lifelike, just like a living person. Hundreds of thousands of terracotta warriors and horses, all looking in one direction. And in that direction is a rock wall with portraits and coffins of emperors of the Tang dynasty. At the very bottom of the rock wall, a carved throne stood there. From the looks of it, this should have been prepared by the monarch of Tang dynasty for himself. It's a pity that he can't use it now. Lu Jin took a step forward and went straight to the rock wall. Looking left and right, Lu Jin touched his chin, but he couldn't see what the mystery of this imperial mausoleum was. From the surface, it looks like an ordinary imperial tomb. Lu Jin couldn't detect any abnormalities with his naked eyes, so he directly used his true energy and divine power. The true energy and divine power spread around like vines. At this moment, Lu Jin discovered that his divine power actually flew towards the coffins of the previous kings of the Tang dynasty. These coffins are actually absorbing their own divine power? Wrong. It's the things in the coffin that are absorbing their own divine power. Thinking of this, Lu Jin raised his hand and pulled out one of the coffins. Without any hesitation, Lu Jin opened the coffin. When the coffin was opened and he saw what was inside, Lu Jin frowned slightly. Among the coffins was a woman with a beautiful face. The woman lay in the center of the coffin, with all kinds of heavenly and earthly treasures piled around her. It was precisely because of the existence of these heavenly and earthly treasures that she could lie in them so safely and soundly. Seeing this, Lu Jin immediately opened other coffins. Really? But in every coffin that can absorb his divine power, there is a person lying in it. A living person. It's just that these people have their vitality sealed. This method can extend their lifespan to the greatest extent. But their breath will also be reduced to the lowest point, and they are basically the same as dead people in ordinary times. There is a living person lying in the dead man's coffin. This demon king of Tang dynasty is quite playful. At this moment, the woman in red, who was the first to open the coffin, opened her eyes. The woman in red suddenly sat up from the coffin. When she saw Lu Jin's face clearly, she couldn't help but frown slightly. "Who are you? Why do you appear in the tomb of the demon Tang Emperor?" Before the woman in red could finish speaking, Lu Jin directly mobilized his divine power and quickly suppressed the woman in red. Sensing the divine pressure emanating from Lu Jin, the woman in red widened her eyes and felt a sense of suffocation. Lu Jin didn't have the slightest intention of pitying her. The ancient Qian Yuan sword came out of its sheath and landed directly on the neck of the woman in red. "You still have time before the second person wakes up. If your words don't satisfy me, I will kill you." Listening to Lu Jin's words, the woman in red felt sweat break out on her back. She had no doubt that Lu Jin would kill her. Wu Zaishan's answer surprised Lu Jin. "Wu Zhao? Give me a reason. The demon king of Tang dynasty?" When these two words came out of Wu Zaishan's mouth, Lu Jin put away the sharp sword in his hand. "But the price Long Xia paid was the entire kingdom of God. Wu Zaishan. There is no divine kingdom in Long Xia." He also thought that Wu Zaishan, as one of the emperors of Yaotang, would take revenge on him for Yaotang. Outer God. The demon Tang must have been destroyed by the person in front of him. Li Yuan? And the first one to be targeted was Long Xia. Without the kingdom of God, we would not be able to become gods and immortals, and be among the immortals. Lu Jin was a little surprised. The woman in front of him was actually the Empress Wu Zaishan? That is the emperor of the Tang dynasty, Li Yuan. Although Long Xia is strong now, it is only on the surface, and the castle in the air will not last long after all. Sure enough, Lu Jin looked at Wu Zaishan the next second. "Now that the demon Tang dynasty has been destroyed by me, Long Han, what do you think I should do with you?" The first is the arrival of the Centenary Lord. The arrival of the Centenary Lord attracted the alien gods, who set their sights on the Hunyuan continent. "I think you should keep us. I am one of the kings of the demon Tang dynasty, my name is Wu Zhao." Wu Zaishan continued, "As the king of the demon Tang dynasty, we could have been among the immortals and become gods and immortals after our death. But now we are sleeping here because there is no divine kingdom in Longxia now. Except for Li Shimin, who was killed by him, he saw in front of him." Lu Jin looked at Wu Zaishan and motioned for her to tell her everything she knew. Just with the methods Lu Jin showed, it was impossible for what he said to be a lie to her. Outer God. Wu Zaishan did not hide anything and told everything she knew. 100 years ago, 3 major events happened in Hunyuan continent. Wu Zaishan looked at Lu Jin. She was so smart, so she didn't know that Lu Jin had such powerful strength and appeared here again. Interesting. The Longxia Divine Kingdom, also known as the Heavenly Court, fought against the outer gods and used all their resources to severely injure the outer gods, thus giving the Hunyuan continent a chance to breathe for a century. 3 major events are closely related. Basically all the emperors of the demonic Tang dynasty were buried in this imperial mausoleum. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 262. I see. Everything was connected in Lu Jin's mind. Everything becomes clear. In other words, I don't need to worry about whether the kingdom of God will pose a threat to me now. Because the Longxia divine kingdom had long ceased to exist, the gods of Longxia sacrificed themselves to give Longxia a chance to breathe. But now the outer god has revived, and the 2 countries have been devoured one after another. If this continues, they will definitely attack me, Longxia, again. Do you have a way to deal with it? Since Wu Zaishan and others know the century-old secret, they must also know how to deal with foreign gods. Wu Zaishan looked at Lu Jin, with light in her eyes, a light called hope. There is a way, but this method is difficult to achieve. Explain. Lu Jin didn't hesitate at all and asked Wu Zaishan to tell him the solution. Rebuild heaven. The moment these 4 words appeared, a system notification sounded in Lu Jin's ears. Ding, congratulations on your successful discovery of the world-class mission Rebuilding Heaven. Ding, do you accept this mission? Rebuild heaven. The former heavenly court tried its best to seriously injure the outer god. In other words, if you want to completely defeat the foreign gods and survive, then a new heaven must be rebuilt, and this heavenly kingdom will be even more powerful than the old heaven. As for the dominance of the old heaven, Lu Jin had long known it from Puppet. The original old heavenly court could be said to be the most powerful existence among all the divine kingdoms. For a moment, Lu Jin felt an invisible force enveloping him. It's something called stress. But he has no right to refuse. If the outer gods come and Long Xia disappears, they Lord Long Xia will not survive. Thinking of this, Lu Jin took a deep breath, and a fire ignited in his eyes. I'll take this mission. Ding, congratulations on successfully accepting the world-class mission Rebuilding Heaven. The moment Lu Jin took over the task, Wu Zetian's eyes also showed a glimmer of light. There is hope. The person in front of me might really become the new Lord of Heaven. The former century-old lords were defeated by this man, which is enough to show Lu Jin's great strength. At this time, a scarlet mission panel appeared in front of Lu Jin. A mission panel he had never seen before. Task name Rebuilding Heaven. Task difficulty unable to evaluate. Task requirements re-establish the Longxia Divine Kingdom, resist the attacks of foreign gods, and successfully protect Longxia from the attacks of foreign gods. Task reward colorless ultimate treasure box. Mission punishment Longxia disappears. After closing the task panel in front of him, Lu Jin looked at Wu Zetian again. At this moment, Wu Zetian no longer had any hostility in her eyes. Facing Wu Zetian like this, Lu Jin couldn't help but ask, I annexed Yaotang, don't you have any hatred for me? Wu Zetian just shook her head, she didn't have any hatred towards Lu Jin. The change of dynasties is a normal thing. There is no eternal dynasty, no eternal emperor. Even the Longxia Divine Kingdom will fall one day. And their only worry now is the foreign gods. The foreign gods are attacking, and they cannot survive without the blessing of the kingdom of God. Wu Zetian and others placed their hopes on the century-old lord. But it seems that these century-old lords have not met their expectations. Now that Lu Jin appears, they see hope again. Besides, if Lu Jin succeeds in establishing the kingdom of God, they can become gods and immortals, gain strength and longevity. Such a transaction is naturally a sure profit without loss. Why do they hate it? Seeing this, Lu Jin put away the Xianyuan ancient sword, and he also noticed that Wu Zetian had no hostility towards him. Now that the enemy is facing him, he still needs a lot of manpower. Now that everyone has a common goal, let's spare their lives. Wu Zetian looked at the location of the tomb, then looked at Lu Jin and said, don't you want to know what the most precious treasure is in this imperial tomb? Hearing these words, Lu Jin turned around again and looked at Wu Zetian. If you have any information, please tell me as soon as possible. I'm not a patient person. General Lu Jin was a little impatient, and Wu Zetian couldn't help but smile bitterly. Underneath this tomb is buried the past kingdom of God, which is a fragment of heaven. Interesting. The huge energy aftermath even caused the demon emperors in the coffins to wake up one after another. Only then did Lu Jin see the fragments of heaven at the bottom of the tomb. Good guy. At this moment, he could feel that the touch of the fragments of heaven was like a yin-yang stone. Wu Zetian and Li Yuan, who had just woken up, stared wide-eyed and couldn't believe their eyes. Lu Jin didn't say anything. He placed his palm on the so-called fragment of heaven. Originally, Lu Jin was still thinking about what treasures the demon Tang Emperor's tomb contained. Seeing this, Wu Zetian didn't say anything. If it were her, she might not believe Lu Jin easily. What year is it today? To activate the fragments of heaven, you need divine power, a lot of divine power. Li Yuan sat up from the coffin. When he saw Wu Zetian, he couldn't help but frown slightly. Then she pointed to the location of the grave. Long Jie and Wen Chu were responsible for keeping an eye on Wu Zetian and others. At this time, Wu Zetian looked at Lu Jin with a playful smile in his eyes. They had never seen such a huge amount of absorption. If it were you, maybe you could really activate the fragments of heaven. The killing gods Bai Qi and Len Yun's sisters immediately mobilized their divine power to activate the fragments of heaven. I saw Wu Zetian using her true energy, and the soil under the tomb was shattered, revealing the body of the building below that looked like glass. He mobilized a little bit of divine power and was instantly absorbed by the fragments of heaven. Pieces of heaven? The Supreme Godhead was operating at full strength, and in an instant, the spiritual energy around Lu Jin was directly drained. Although we have the cultivation of the God-human realm, we do not have the divine personality and cannot gather divine power. Hiss. Suddenly, the entire imperial mausoleum began to shake. Even if Wu Zetian said that they were on the same front now, Lu Jin could not give her his back. But before Wu Zetian could answer his question, Lu Jin also joined the queue to activate the fragments of heaven. If you have a way to activate the fragments of heaven, it might help you rebuild heaven. At the same time, Wu Zetian looked at Lu Jin with a hint of awe. Wu Zetian took Lu Jin to one of the tombs. He finally knew why the demon king of Tang dynasty fell into the hands of Lu Jin. After Lu Jin was sure it was correct, he immediately called in the god of killing Bai Qi, the Len Yun sisters, Long Jie and Wen Chu. But he never imagined that the demon Tang emperor's tomb itself was a rare treasure. Endless spiritual energy gathered into a huge whirlpool over the imperial mausoleum. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 263. Although the demon king of Tang possesses divine power, his divine power is simply not enough to activate the fragments of heaven. This is also the reason why the demon king of Tang dynasty has always been obsessed with godhood. But now, the demon king of Tang dynasty has fallen, and the fragments of heaven have also fallen into Lu Jin's hands. Rumble. With the injection of Lu Jin's divine power, the fragments of heaven sleeping in the underground of Yaotang awakened again. Lu Jin looked at the attribute panel that suddenly appeared in front of him, with a smile on his face. Done. Name Tianting, Lingxiao Palace. Quality the only red god level. Affiliation Longhan. Effect 1 God, there will no longer be an upper limit on the number of godheads in Longxia. Those who are powerful in the divine human realm will have the opportunity to condense their godheads if they are recognized by heaven. Effect 2 Godhood, you can spend 100 million gold coins to issue a godhead promotion task. If you successfully complete the task, you can obtain different qualities of godhead according to the difficulty and perfection of the completed task. Effect 3 Emperor of Heaven, the ruler of Longhan will receive a bonus from heaven, and the upper limit of divine power will be increased by 10 times. Good guy. Unexpectedly, the fragment of heaven sleeping in the underground of Yaotang turned out to be the Lingxiao Palace. Moreover, the effect of this Lingxiao Palace made Lu Jin even more surprised. The restriction of divine power in the Longxia area turned out to be caused by the disappearance of Heavenly Court. Now that the fragments of heaven are back in place, the laws are complete, and the restrictions on the Godhead are naturally released. However, it is similar to the Wuhao Palace and Hualin Pavilion that Lu Jin obtained. He is only qualified to start the Godhead trial mission, and does not have the right to directly issue Godhead. 100 million gold coins is a large sum for Lu Jin. Now that he has many generals under his command, if they all participate in the Godhead trial mission, for Lu Jin, the admission ticket alone will be a huge sum of money. At this time, Wu Zetian and Li Yuan took a step forward. Just now, Wu Zetian also told Li Yuan about various past events. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, Li Yuan waved his hand and didn't care at all. As long as you can become an immortal or a god, and be in the immortal class, it will be worth it even if you have to sacrifice everything. It's not what I said. We are already in the coffin. Why are we still entangled with these mortal imperial powers? Isn't it just for today that we handed Yao Tang over to that stranger? Now that the heaven begins to be rebuilt, we must do our best to assist the new Lord of the heaven. Maybe when the new heaven is established, we can get a good position as gods. After listening to Li Yuan's words, Wu Zetian couldn't help but give Li Yuan a thumbs up. Fortunately, he was the founding emperor of the Demon Tang dynasty. This situation is huge. Immediately afterwards, the remaining founding emperors woke up one after another. But with Li Yuan suppressing them, they didn't dare to complain at all. After Li Yuan finished teaching those evil Tang emperors, he came directly to Lu Jin. Li Yuan, I have met the Lord of God. My lord, now that the heaven has just been rebuilt, it is time to recruit troops. If the Lord of God doesn't dislike it, we can ride the horse and the horse for the Lord of God, honoring the merits of the dogs and horses. Lu Jin glanced at Li Yuan, who had just woken up, and couldn't help but feel speechless. All I can say is that I really need manpower now. Rebuilding heaven is no small matter. Just searching for the remaining fragments of heaven is enough to give me a headache for a while. Fortunately, now with the help of Li Yuan and Wu Zetian, I might be able to relax a little bit. In that case, you two will follow us to the ground. I have a good errand to arrange for you. Errand. Although Li Yuan and Wu Zetian had doubts in their hearts. But considering that Lu Jin has now become the new Lord of Heaven, they have no choice. I can only follow Lu Jin until the end. Please ask the Lord God to make arrangements. On the other side, envoys from all walks of life have arrived at the capitals of the three dynasties. The first is Xian Qin. In Lu Jin's eyes, Xian Qin is definitely a strong opponent. What's more, after the investigation, his attitude towards Xian Qin was even more wary. Qin Shi Huang, seeking longevity, eventually died young, and Qin, a powerful nation of one generation, perished in his second lifetime. But if Qin Shi Huang really sought immortality, what would the Qin state develop into? And it is precisely because the immortal first emperor Yingzheng sat in the Qin state that the current Qin state has such a huge scale. The envoy delivered the letter to Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng. The eunuch next to him, Zhao Gao, immediately screamed, "Your Majesty, let us test it out first to avoid any fraud in this letter." It doesn't matter. Since Long Han has sent an envoy here, it means that King Long Han is not that kind of villain. Besides, I don't believe there is any way to threaten me. This is the confidence of Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng, the confidence of a strong man. When he opened the letter and read it carefully, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng sneered. Alliance. Only the weak will join forces. Originally I thought that Lord Longhan would be a good opponent, but now it seems that I made a mistake. Kill one of my Xian Qin generals and kill countless of my sons. Do you want an alliance? Ridiculous. Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng tore up the letter, but the envoy did not speak. When the two countries are at war, the envoys will not be killed. The proud Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng did not kill the envoy. Instead, he asked the envoy to carry a message back. Pass on my instructions and make him prepare to die. After saying that, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng waved his sleeves and motioned to the surrounding guards to drive the envoys out. The messenger was neither humble nor arrogant, as if he had expected this outcome. But just when the envoy turned around and was about to leave, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng suddenly looked in the direction of Yaotang. He frowned, and there was a trace of surprise on his face. This breath is the breath of heaven, but why is it in Yaotang? This direction is the Chang'an city of Yaotang. Thinking of this, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng spoke again. Stop. As soon as these words came out, the envoy narrowed his eyes slightly and turned to look at Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng. What else does your majesty have to do? Could it be that Qin Shi Huangying Zheng planned to kill himself here? It's not like I haven't thought about this situation myself. However, the messenger was not panicked. I also have the trump card given by His Majesty. If I really fight hard, it will be more than enough to return to Longhan safely. Just when the scene became tense, Qin Shi Huangying Zheng spoke again. I agree. In 3 days, I will go to Chang'an City in person. What? Zhao Gao's eyes widened and he couldn't believe his ears. What's the situation? Your Majesty, you just rejected the invitation and even slapped him. As a result, you agreed before they even left home. Sure enough, emperors have been the hardest to guess since ancient times. Although everyone had many doubts, no one dared to take the initiative to ask Qin Shi Huangying Zheng. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 264. After receiving the affirmation of Qin Shi Huangying Zheng, the Longhan envoy left Xianqin. At the same time, Lu Jin was informed of everything that happened in the Xianqin court. Lu Jin was so smart that he immediately deduced the whole story based on Qin Shi Huangying Zheng's various performances. It seems that he should also know what happened back then. It just so happens that Qin Shi Huangying Zheng knows about the existence of the fragment of heaven. That means he must have the information Lu Jin needs. Now, what Lu Jin has to do is to be prepared to get the information he wants from Qin Shi Huangying Zheng. After all, what he has to face is Qin Shi Huangying Zheng, who breaks through the restrictions and becomes immortal. Under Lu Jin's arrangement, a large amount of supplies were delivered to Chang'an City. There were even many craftsmen who came to Chang'an City. Today's Longhan's productivity is far behind even that of Yaotang. In addition, during the siege, there was almost no damage to the city. The reconstruction of Chang'an City went more smoothly than Lu Jin imagined. And early that morning, a convoy arrived at Chang'an City. The soldiers at the gate saw the unknown carriage and immediately took a step forward. When the 2 strong men in front of the carriage saw the soldiers approaching, not only did they not show any fear on their faces, but they exuded a faint sense of coercion, which made the Longhan soldiers on the opposite side frown slightly. Practitioner. He is also a practitioner of high cultivation. Thinking of this, many Longhan soldiers clenched the sharp blades in their hands. For a moment, there was a tense situation at the city gate. Tiend, Borin, don't be rude. At this moment, a middle-aged man's voice came from the carriage. The sound sounded, and the 2 strong men in front of the car immediately stopped breathing. However, although they put away their breath, they still had unconvinced expressions on their faces. You bunch of slaves, why don't you get out of here? Do you know who the people in the carriage are? If you collide with His Majesty, you will be chopped off even if you have 9 heads. His Majesty. Hearing these 2 words, Longhan soldiers all narrowed their eyes, with a dangerous killing intent flashing in their eyes. But at this moment, the pressure of divine power came like a tide. The god of death Bai Qi jumped down from the tower and landed directly in front of the carriage. Sensing the pressure of divine power emanating from the god of death Bai Qi, even the beings in the carriage couldn't help but tremble slightly. This is Longhan's territory, and Longhan has only one majesty from beginning to end, and that is His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor. Looking at the carriage in front of him, Bai Qi, the god of death, remembered what Lu Jin said. 3 days later, the motorcade representing the 3 dynasties will arrive in Chang'an City. Lu Jin himself will go to meet Xianqin's convoy. And there are 2 left, whether they are Wu Ming or Dao Song. The strength of these 2 dynasties is simply not enough for Longhan, so if they dare to cause trouble in Chang'an City, just teach them a lesson. Although these 2 dynasties are suppressed, there is no need to worry. The worst thing is to start a war and earn more war points. Lu Jin's opponent is always Xianqin. Therefore, looking at the carriage in front of him, Bai Qi, the god of death, had already determined in the city tower that this was definitely not Xianqin's motorcade. Once confirmed, there is no need to give them any face. After hearing these words, the two generals in front of the car looked ugly. What the god of death Bai Qi said was a slap in their faces. But what can be done? Opposite is a being with divine status. At this time, the curtain of the carriage was opened, and a middle-aged man stepped out of the carriage. My subordinate, Wu Daihong, is the king of Wuming. I am not strict in disciplining my men, so I ask this general to be magnanimous and let us go. Hearing these words, the two generals next to them widened their eyes. What the hell? You are the king of Wuming, why would you apologize to a guard general? Still so groveling. For a moment, the two generals looked uglier than if they had eaten flies. Wu Daihong turned to look at the two generals, the pressure of the emperor dissipated, and said coldly. Does it mean that my words won't work outside? Apologize. This king of Song dynasty doesn't need to be beaten at all. He has started to behave with his tail between his legs before entering Chang'an city. After the inspection, the god of death Bai Qi led them towards the palace. And Lu Jin stood on the city wall, looking into the distance. Compared with other monarchs, the monarch of Daesong dynasty has a relatively peaceful mentality. Both of them are gods and humans, and Chang Yuchun is Lan Yu's brother-in-law. The relationship between the two is unusual. You can lean against a big tree to enjoy the shade, and hold your thighs to take off. The king of Daesong looked at the Chang'an city in front of him. Although there were still traces of blood on the city walls, the entire Chang'an city had returned to normal levels. Chang'an city's battle damage was recovered so quickly. Calculating the time, Xianqin's team should have arrived by now. But when the convoy approached, Lu Jin narrowed his eyes. It was more of an elite force than a convoy. On the city wall, the two sisters Len Yun and Len Yu stood there. Len Yun's eyes fell in the direction of Wu Daihong, the king of Wuming. There is no need to complete the mission originally assigned to us by His Majesty. As His Majesty said, Wuming's national power is far inferior to our Long Han. Having said this, Len Yun chuckled. On the city wall, Long Jie and Wen Chu stood there. From the time when Yaotang was annexed to when he came, it only took a few days. So as not to ruin Lu Jin's plan, she forcibly suppressed her murderous intention to kill Lord Wuming. Seeing this, Wen Chu spread his hands and said nothing more. Similarly, at another city gate, Daesong's motorcade arrived at Chang'an city. I didn't expect that this king of Song dynasty would be a guy with no ambitions. When the two generals heard these words, they could only apologize to the god of death Bai Qi. While Long Jie next to him listened to Wenku's analysis, he did not agree, but instead expressed his own opinion. The king of Daesong and the king of Wuming came to Chang'an city one after another, and in the end only the Xianqin team was left. Don't judge a person by his appearance. Thinking of this, King Daesong made a decision. Perhaps an alliance with Lu Jin would be a good choice. Watching Daesong's motorcade enter Chang'an city, Wenku touched his chin and couldn't help but sigh. With that said, Long Jie jumped off the city wall and continued to monitor the king of Song dynasty. The next second, Lu Jin's eyes narrowed. Those two generals, according to the Black Guard's intelligence, should be the founding generals of Wuming, Suda, and Chang Yuchun. After everything was settled, Wu Daihong, the king of Wuming, led his men and accepted various inspections like a commoner. Lan Yu was beheaded, and this time King Wuming brought Chang Yuchun here, fearing that he was harboring evil intentions. I saw a convoy appearing on the distant horizon. This is enough to prove Long Han's terrifying background. No matter how much evil intentions are hidden, no one can make any mistakes in the early stage of the meeting. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 265. The black Xianqin flag flutters in the wind. A luxurious vehicle was surrounded by many black armored soldiers in the center. On both sides of the carriage, several generals were fully armed and guarding both sides of the carriage with solemn expressions. The person in the carriage must be the king of immortal Qin, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng. Lu Jin stood on the city wall and watched Xian Qin's team gradually approach Chang'an City. The first round of confrontation has begun. When the soldiers of Xian Qin saw the city gate, not only did they not slow down at all, they changed their formation on horseback and walked straight towards the city gate. It seems that they are planning to force their way through the level directly. Lu Jin, who was standing on the city wall, narrowed his eyes. Want to give him a blow? Even Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng would not be able to do it. Lu Jin tapped his index finger on the city wall bricks. The next second, the soldiers at the city gate were uniformly intercepted directly in front of Xian Qin's motorcade. Routine inspection, stop the car. Before he finished speaking, a black armored soldier shouted angrily. I am the immortal Qin Iron Eagle warrior, retreat, and let's go. In an instant, all the Iron Eagle warriors released their own infuriating pressure. The huge infuriating pressure was like a ferocious beast, attacking directly towards the soldiers guarding the city. The corner of Lu Jin's mouth on the city wall was slightly raised. He was worthy of being a soldier of Xian Qin, and his aura was arrogant enough. Unfortunately, if the targets of their arrogance were ordinary soldiers, they might not be able to withstand such ferocious pressure. But long before that, Lu Jin had replaced all the city defenders with Holy Soul guards. Roar! The White Tiger Demon Soul emerged, and a Holy Soul guard directly released the pressure of the immortal realm. In an instant, the beast's majestic power covered the entire De Qin convoy. Then, the second, the third, the fourth. Hundreds of demons are rampant, and the beasts are so powerful. The violent pressure was like a scourge, swallowing up the Xian Qin convoy. The faces of those Iron Eagle warriors were pale at this moment, and they no longer had the arrogance they had before. Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng, who was in the carriage, snorted coldly. A bunch of useless things. The dragon roar sounded. A black dragon rises from the carriage. The terrifying dragon power swept across. And at the moment when Long Wei just unfolded, the Golden Dragon Holy Soul Guard arrived at the scene. He noticed that the source of the dragon's power was the carriage where Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng was. The Golden Dragon Saint Soul Guard sneered, how arrogant! When you arrive at Chang'an City and Longhan's territory, how can you be allowed to be arrogant? A yin-yang stone containing divine power appeared in the hands of the Golden Dragon Saint Soul Guard. He knew very well that the other party was the king of immortal Qin. Therefore, if you want to give the opponent a decisive blow, you must try your best. Hit with one punch to avoid 100 punches coming. Absorbing divine power, the Golden Dragon Saint Soul Guard directly released his own demon soul. Roar! At this moment, the Golden Dragon and the Black Dragon appeared over Chang'an City at the same time. The two dragon spirits are constantly fighting and entangled. In the end, the Golden Dragon was superior and tore the Black Dragon into pieces. Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng in the carriage suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Supernatural power. And dragon power. But at this moment, an even more terrifying force emerged. Lu Jin looked at the Golden Dragon in the sky and knew it was his time to appear. The Supreme Godhead circulates and is covered by divine power, directly suppressing the Golden Dragon. Upon noticing Lu Jin's aura, the Golden Dragon Saint Soul Guard immediately understood and put away his demonic soul aura. When everything calmed down, Lu Jin strolled to the Xian Qin team. I'm sorry, my subordinates don't know that the king of Xian Qin is here. It's all misunderstanding, it's all misunderstanding. Misunderstand. Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng in the carriage looked gloomy and his aura was somewhat disordered. But he didn't have an attack, because he knew Longhan's strength from the previous battle. Longhan is very strong, although compared with his Xian Qin, it is slightly lacking. But if he is given time, Long Han will definitely surpass Xian Qin, and even surpass Xiao Xia. Thinking of this, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng stepped out of the carriage. When he saw Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng, Lu Jin's eyes met his. At this moment, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng put down all his airs. Did you activate the fragment of heaven? Without any courtesy, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng got straight to the point and asked directly what he wanted to know most. Faced with this problem, Lu Jin did not hide anything. That's right. After receiving Lu Jin's answer, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng nodded. Since you activated the fragments of heaven, you must also know about the old heaven. Originally I didn't plan to come here, but the appearance of the new heaven forced me to pay attention to it again. Boy, do you know that there are also fragments of heaven in Xianqin, and there are even more than one, but I have never planned to activate the fragments of heaven. Do you know why? Child Long Han, since you have been able to make it this far, keep going over there and let me see how far you can go. Because he is afraid. And Lu Jin knew it all too well. And if you die, you will overestimate your capabilities and be a complete loser. Not qualified enough to take on this responsibility. These two words are so heavy. He is afraid that if he fails, he will become a sinner through the ages. But then, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng changed the subject. And I have no use for those fragments of heaven. They will be sent to Chang'an City in a while. But next, Xianqin will withdraw from the war, and Xianqin can save itself. I am a mortal, not a god. After hearing these words, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng smiled instead of being angry. At this moment, Yingzheng turned back into Qin Shi Huang again. But now, let me risk my life to save the common people in an illusory world. I have been pursuing it for hundreds of years and finally found the way to immortality. I have paid too much for immortality and survival. Maybe he activated the fragments of heaven and became the divine master of the new heaven, but in the eyes of Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng, he was not qualified enough. He looked at Lu Jin and raised his hand. Responsibility. It turns out that Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng, who was famous in Longxia, was just a coward. Now he is like a senior, asking Lu Jin questions. Because once the fragments of heaven are activated, I will take the responsibility of rebuilding heaven. He was afraid that he would die on the way to rebuilding heaven. Listening to Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng's words, Lu Jin frowned slightly. That's right. Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng collected a lot of heaven fragments, but even if he had the ability to activate the heaven fragments, he did not activate them. At this moment, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng no longer calls himself me. If Longxia disappears and is shattered, what's the point of your pursuit of immortality? I can't do it. It seems that Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng does not intend to join his alliance. If I die and future generations know, I am already the emperor of the ages, Qin Shi Huang. He was afraid that he would have to bear the responsibility of all the people in the world. And this responsibility concerns the entire people of Longxia. That Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng who was desperate for immortality. Why? I will not attend the meeting, and I will not join the alliance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the God-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 266. After saying that, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng turned and left. The convoy didn't even enter Chang'an City before it turned around again and headed towards Xianqin. Lu Jin touched his chin as he watched the Xianqin convoy gradually leave. When did Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng become so easy to talk to? But after thinking for a moment, Lu Jin quickly understood Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng's thoughts. What a cunning guy. On the carriage, Qin Shi Huan Yingzheng sat there, closing his eyes and relaxing. But the corners of his mouth couldn't help but raise slightly. Seeing him today was not without gain. At this time, Qin's military general Li Xian rode up to the carriage. "Your Majesty, are we going back like this? The fragment of the heavenly court can be said to be a treasure, and it was just given to Long Han like this." General Meng Tian died in the hands of Long Han. Before he finished speaking, Zhao Gao immediately came over and interrupted Li Xian's words. "Bold, how can you question His Majesty's decision?" The other generals' eyes fell here, as if they were also waiting for Qin Shi Huangyingzheng's answer. Qin Shi Huangyingzheng, who was sitting in the carriage, heard the movement outside and spoke calmly. "The fragments of heaven are of no use to us, immortal Qin. But the threat from the outer gods is real to our immortal Qin. After meeting Lord Long Han today, I noticed the divine aura on his body. That is a very special kind of godhead. Above all gods. He has never seen the coercion of a godhead that can affect his own godhead." Such a discovery made Qin Shi Huangyingzheng realize. If Lu Jin is allowed to grow up, he will definitely be able to surpass himself. So, will I let him grow? The answer is, yes. He needs someone to deal with the foreign gods, and Lu Jin is the best chess piece. If Lu Jin cannot defeat the outer god, it will definitely cause heavy damage to the outer god. At that time, it was time to take action. But if Lu Jin could successfully defeat the foreign god, it would definitely consume a lot of energy. At that time, I can directly get rid of Lu Jin, the biggest obstacle. Qin Shi Huangyingzheng smiled lightly. This is a business that is sure to make money without losing money. As the saying goes, the snipe and the clam compete with each other to make a profit. And he is the fisherman. As for Lu Jin, even if he is extremely smart and knows his intentions, he will still choose to accept the fragments of heaven and rebuild heaven. Zhao Gao, after returning to the palace, go get the 50 big boards yourself. The voice of Qin Shi Huangyingzheng came from the carriage again. When Zhao Gao heard this, he suddenly broke into a cold sweat. Apparently, his little thoughts were discovered by Qin Shi Huangyingzheng. Originally, Zhao Gao could stop Li Xian before he spoke, but he also had doubts in his heart, so he did not stop Li Xian. After Li Xian asked the question, Zhao Gao stepped forward to stop him. He originally thought that his little thoughts would not be discovered, but Qin Shi Huangyingzheng was the emperor of the ages after all. Naturally, such a small thought cannot be hidden from him. If he were not in a good enough mood now, the punishment Zhao Gao received would not be so simple. The carriage continued to walk in the direction of Xianqin. And Lu Jin of Chang'an City naturally understood Qin Shi Huangyingzheng's thoughts. "Do you want me to fight with the foreign gods and reap the benefits in the end? What a Qin Shi Huang, let's wait and see when the time comes. Winner or loser, since Lu Jin dares to accept the fragments of heaven sent by Xianqin, he is confident that he will remove all obstacles in the future. Although the two seem to be in harmony now, every move they make contains evil intentions." Lu Jin snorted coldly, turned around and walked towards the palace. In the imperial palace of Chang'an City, the kings of the two dynasties were already seated. All kinds of delicacies were presented to the king of Wuming, Wu Daihong, and the king of Song dynasty, King Songming. The 2-century-old lords were sitting there, not paying any attention to the delicacies in front of them. Both of their eyes fell on a seat. And that seat was exactly the seat reserved by Lu Jin for Xianqin. They gathered in Chang'an City this time, and they all knew it well. The outcome of their discussion will affect the course of the entire war. But at this moment, 2 spies came over and whispered in the ears of Wu Daihong and King Songming respectively. After listening to the spies' report, Wu Daihong's eyes lit up. Yingzheng didn't even enter the city gate and just left? Everyone couldn't believe that Xianqin actually quit. Hearing these words, Lu Jin smiled. Is he so brave? Xianqin and your Wu Ming alliance. Wu Daihong was stunned for a moment, then his eyes widened and he looked at Lu Jin in disbelief. Thinking of this, Wu Daihong's originally weak aura suddenly became stronger. In terms of national strength, our Wu Ming is only stronger than you Long Han. If you dare to continue fighting us, we Wu Ming are not vegetarians. Before he could speak, Wu Daihong spoke first. Even King Songming, the king of Song dynasty, who was originally a bit weak, now put on airs. After sitting down, Lu Jin looked at the two monarchs. You're just going to drive me away like this? Lu Jin sneered, okay. System announcement, Xian Qin announced that it will withdraw from the War Dungeon 5 Kingdoms Chaos. I have discussed with the civil and military officials. If you are willing to hand over the person who killed Lan Yu and let us handle it, we can sit down and talk. After saying these words, Wu Daihong felt proud. Lu Jin was slightly stunned. He did not expect that King Wu Ming would actually say such words. At this moment, Lu Jin walked into the hall and went straight to the main seat to sit down. But unexpectedly, in a twist of events, Xian Qin actually didn't give Long Han any face at all. How much he looked down on Long Han. As soon as the words fell, the two people walked in and came behind Wu Daihong. Come here, see the guests off. It seems that there is no agreement. What qualifications do you have? If you are unwilling to hand over the criminal, then there is no need for us to continue talking. Originally, he was prepared to be humiliated. Anyway, if there is a war, it will definitely be a war between Xian Qin and Long Han. Their two dynasties only need to add fuel and firewood, and Long Han will inevitably collapse. Your name is Lu Jin, right? Didn't you come to us today to discuss alliance cooperation? If that were the case, he wouldn't be here. Aren't you afraid that I will defect to Xian Qin and then join forces with Xian Qin to attack you, Long Han? Is it worth offending me, Wu Ming and Xian Qin, for a sinner? If that's the case, then what's there to be afraid of? 3 consecutive system announcements directly slapped the news in the faces of all the alien lords. As soon as he finished speaking, the system's announcement sounded. If you don't accept it, fight. Ha ha ha, since Xian Qin has rejected Lu Jin's invitation, what else do I have to be afraid of? Is Wu Ming stronger than Long Han? Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 267. Long Han Yu Fengxiu, what's going on? Xian Qin quit. Wu Ming Lizhuang, how is that possible? Will Xian Qin surrender without a fight? Tao Song Xian Kishan, with the strength of Xian Qin, how could it be possible to surrender without a fight? Could it be that he made some kind of deal with Long Han? Long Han Jiangzi, that's fine without one immortal Qin, our pressure will be reduced a lot. News came out that Xian Qin had withdrawn from the war copy. For a time, some people were happy and some were sad. The most worried among them is naturally Wu Ming Guojun, Wu Daihong. A thin layer of sweat broke out on Wu Daihong's forehead, and he stood there for a long time unable to speak. Looking at the guards getting closer and closer, Wu Daihong's face became very ugly. He looked at Lu Jin and forced himself to calm down. You, Long Han, are really not afraid of Wu Ming and Xian Qin joining forces? Lu Jin glanced at him, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and let out a disdainful laugh. Who do you think you are? Do you deserve it? As soon as these words came out, Wu Daihong's face became even more ugly, and there was even a hint of anger in his eyes. Okay, I finally understand. You, Long Han, invited me here just to humiliate me. Humiliation? No, you must have misunderstood. The only person I want to cooperate with is Xian Qin. As for you, I just want to give you a chance to survive. Lu Jin looked at Wu Daihong, the sneer in his eyes not being concealed at all. It's obvious that you didn't position yourself right from the beginning to the end. Wu Daihong, please go. At least in Chang'an City, I won't do anything to you. What? Wu Daihong was sweating from behind. Why didn't he understand Lu Jin's subtext? How could he leave Chang'an City without taking action inside Chang'an City? At this moment, there was a sudden thud from the side. The king of Song dynasty, King Songming, knelt down and worshipped directly in front of Lu Jin. This behavior made Wu Daihong's heart sink even more. The king of Song dynasty, King Songming, is willing to become a vassal state of Long Han. Please Emperor Long Yuan, give me a chance. At this time of life and death, King Songming did not hesitate to make an action that everyone expected. Become a vassal state of Long Han. Looking at King Songming in front of him, Lu Jin looked at King Songming with great interest. The opportunity depends on your sincerity. King Songming understood immediately. He looked outside the door and shouted quickly. Bring in all the gifts I prepared. Gift. As the colorful brilliance shone in front of Lu Jin, 3 colorful saint-level treasure boxes appeared in front of Lu Jin. 3 colorful saint-level treasure chests. This is really a big deal. Lu Jin waved his hand and took down 3 colorful holy treasure boxes, then looked at King Songming. Very good, I'm very satisfied with this gift. But it's not that easy to become my subject country. King Ming of Song dynasty was humbled in the world at this moment. Faced with Lu Jin's repeated conditions, he was not impatient at all. Please do not hesitate to ask His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor. If His Majesty Emperor Long Yuan is afraid that I am planning something evil, I have an idea. This is the holy level item book of contract I obtained. Once you make a contract, you can receive system rules restrictions. If I violate the contract, the system will punish me without His Majesty Long Yuan taking action. Is there such a good thing? Lu Jin held the contract book in his hand, his eyes fell on the blank contract book, and its attribute panel was naturally displayed. Name contract book. Quality colorful holy products. Effect after writing the rules, all contractors must follow the rules above. Any violation will be punished. Interesting. Lu Jin waved his hand and wrote down the rules in the contract book. Rule 1, Dao Song cannot declare war on Long Han. Rule 2, Dao Song must pay tribute to Long Han every year. Rule 3, if Long Han dispatches Dao Song cannot refuse. Lu Jin wrote down several rules eloquently. Every time a rule appears, the veins on Wu Daihong's forehead can't help but beat. This is totally bullying. The entire rules of the contract book are exploiting Dao Song. But the king of Song dynasty, King Ming of Song dynasty, was still cheerful, as if he had nothing to do. After Lu Jin finished writing, he directly threw the contract book to King Songming. If you can accept it, then sign it. Seeing King Songming holding the book of contract, Lu Jin could even think of it. In the next second, King Songming will tear the entire contract into pieces. But King Songming didn't even look carefully and signed his name directly. Even after he signed his name, he happily handed the contract book to Lu Jin. This operation made Wu Daihong and Lu Jin unable to believe it. King Songming actually signed it? Wu Daihong pointed at King Songming's nose and cursed angrily. You have no shame. You were able to sign such a contract. You are still a century-old lord. Have you lived like a dog for the past 100 years? Faced with Wu Daihong's ridicule, King Songming answered unhurriedly. Why don't you sign? What's the shame in becoming a vassal state of Long Han? Let me ask you, after you leave Chang'an City today, can you still deal with Long Han? As soon as these words came out, Wu Daihong broke out in cold sweat. Yes. Xian Qin withdrew, and Dao Song became a vassal state of Long Han. So next, doesn't Long Han only need to deal with Wu Ming? King Ming of Song dynasty looked at Lu Jin and said, if your majesty is willing, I think Song dynasty can send troops to attack Wu Ming together with Long Han. Wu Daihong's face turned red. He didn't expect that King Songming was so shameless and actually discussed with Lu Jin in front of him how to annex Wu Ming. He knew that if he continued to stay, he would only suffer in vain. Besides, it's not like he doesn't have a chance. As long as he can get the support of other dynasties, it is not impossible to deal with Long Han. Thinking of this, Wu Daihong turned around and left the palace. At this time, the system's voice sounded. System announcement: Daesong has become a vassal state of Long Han, and Daesong has withdrawn from the war dungeon. The appearance of the system notification stunned the lords. What's the situation? Daesong became a vassal state of Long Han? From this point of view, wouldn't Wu Ming be the only one left in the Five Kingdoms war dungeon? Long Han Yu Fengxiu, damn it, is Mr. Lu Jin so fierce? First he destroyed Demon Tang, then persuaded Xian Qin to retreat, and now he accepts Dao Song as his younger brother? Dao Song Huang Xiaoming, what, has Daesong become a vassal state of Long Han? Long Han Bei Mingxiu, what, not convinced, still want to fight? Daesong Huang Xiaoming, ha ha ha, just kidding, isn't this great wealth? Dao Song and Bai Xianghang, I have long heard that Long Han is magical and extraordinary. Now that Long Han has become our leader, why don't we just follow him in the future? Dao Song Huaruyi, Lu Jin, my male god, finally we can be together. Seeing the lords of Daesong being so excited, the lords of Long Han were confused. Isn't this script wrong? Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 268. Looking at the lively Lord Daesong in the chat channel, even Lu Jin did not expect that this would be the result. After most of the Daesong lords heard that Daesong had become a subsidiary of Long Han, their first reaction was surprise. Only a small number of Daesong lords expressed dissatisfaction. But as soon as this opinion came up, it was immediately beaten down by other Daesong lords. Such a situation surprised Lu Jin. However, since all the lords in Daesong are like this, it is not a bad idea to make Daesong a vassal of Long Han. With less pressure, Lu Jin can have more energy to start rebuilding the heaven. In the following time, Lu Jin became a hands-off shopkeeper. With the help of the teleportation array, he returned to Qianlong City. Today, Qianlong City has already become a magnificent city. The entire city's population alone reaches tens of millions. Numbering tens of millions, among the cities of other dynasties, how many cities can reach such a terrifying population capacity? Although the population of Qianlong City has reached tens of millions, there is no sign of congestion when walking on the street. Lu Jin looked down at the huge city in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. From a small village to today's huge city, Lu Jin also sighed a lot along the way. Lu Jin did not stay too long in the market. He walked forward and went straight to Long Han Hall. There was no one in Long Han Hall at the moment. Lu Jin sat on the dragon chair and looked at his backpack. In the backpack, the three colorful holy treasure chests just obtained are exuding an alluring brilliance. Just right, let me see what kind of treasures can be found in these three treasure chests. Lu Jin waved his hand and took out all three treasure boxes. First, pick up the first treasure box, and there is no system notification sound in your ears. It seems that the quality of this treasure chest is not very good. In this case, Lu Jin didn't have much expectations for what would be found in the treasure chest. Open the treasure chest. First open a treasure chest. Immediately afterwards, a series of sounds sounded in Lu Jin's ears. Ding, congratulations on getting the colorful holy level plant creation derived tree. Ding, congratulations on getting the colorful holy level item fairy Baoquin stone. Ding, congratulations on getting the colorful holy grade agricultural tool Shen Nong Ho. A colorful holy level plant? Lu Jin took out the creation derivative tree from his backpack. He saw a pure white sapling, like a jade-carved sapling, hanging in his palm. The moment the creation derivative tree appeared, Lu Jin saw that it began to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. Under its absorption, the surrounding spiritual energy had a faint tendency to whirlpool. Interesting. To be able to possess such a majestic absorptive ability, this fortune-derived tree must be extraordinary. If it is cultivated in the future, it may be promoted to a divine tree. But what Lu Jin is more concerned about is the specific function of this sapling. Name: creation-derived tree. Quality: the only one. Colorful holy product. Effect: 1. Condensation of spiritual energy. The concentration of spiritual energy around the creation tree will increase by 10 times. Effect: 2. It comes down to the same source. The growth speed of plants around the creation-derived tree is increased by 10 times, and the spiritual power content is increased by 10 times. Effect: 3. Condensation of spiritual power can be unlocked only by upgrading the creation derivative tree to the level of a saint. Oh! When he saw the unlocking conditions required for Effect 3, Lu Jin looked at the creation derivative tree in his hand with a hint of surprise in his eyes. This creation-derived tree can actually be cultivated by oneself? Interesting. Immediately afterwards, Lu Jin looked at the creation tree in his hand and began to think about where to place it. By far, the most suitable place for creating a tree derived from nature is the Four Seasons Garden. The Four Seasons Garden is full of aura and contains many exotic plants, so it should be the most suitable place for trees derived from nature to survive. Thinking of this, Lu Jin turned around and took the creation derivative tree to the Four Seasons Garden. As soon as he arrived at the Four Seasons Garden, Lu Jin saw Zhang Jijhen holding a pair of scissors, pruning among the many flowers and plants. Today, Zhang Ji is already at the saint level, and the scissors in his hand are made by Ouyuzi using a special technique, which can be regarded as a magical weapon. Next to Zhang Ji, a familiar old man stood next to Zhang Ji, his eyes filled with sighs of vicissitudes of life. I didn't expect that after so many years, the gap between you and me is so huge. Today's Hua Tuo, although he has gone through many vicissitudes of life, can only reach the level of second-grade cultivation. Wouldn't that make him a monster? Hua Tuo's eyes widened and he couldn't believe his ears. Lu Jin looked at Hua Tuo and didn't say much. He chose his own path, so Lu Jin didn't want to say too much. But seeing that his colleagues were so different from him, why didn't he care at all? I have met His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor. He is no longer the same person he was back then. The little man Hua Tuo has met your majesty. After hearing these words, Lu Jin also understood the identity of this old man. The person in front of me is Long Yuan Emperor Lu Jin, who has swallowed up 2 countries and has the status of a god. Boom. Today, Hua Tuo has gone through many vicissitudes of life, and there are even more traces of time on his face. A second-grade warrior would be a bit underwhelming among the guards of Qianlong City. Lu Jin took a step forward and walked into the Four Seasons Garden. Many plant spirits showed their coercion and directly crushed the creation-derived trees. Now Hua Tuo was even more frightened when he met Lu Jin. Over the Four Seasons Garden, many strange phenomena appeared one after another. At this moment, several more terrifying pressures swept through the greenhouse inside the Four Seasons Garden. If you had chosen to stay in Qianlong City, your achievements would definitely not be inferior to mine. Ha ha ha, there are times in life that must come to pass. There are no times in life, so don't force it. I have never regretted my choice. When Zhang Ji saw Lu Jin, he immediately stepped forward respectfully. And myself? Zhang Ji looked at the old man next to him. This man was Hua Tuo, who had left Qianlong City. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, the creation derivative tree suddenly erupted with astonishing pressure. The dragon made of flames, the phoenix made of petals, the white tiger made of condensed energy. I saw him taking out the creation derivative tree. Compared to Zhang Ji, who has stayed in the Four Seasons Garden for many years, their appearance is completely different. Can plants also practice cultivation? This is a holy grade plant that I recently obtained. The environment of the Four Seasons Garden should be more suitable for it to practice here. There are no other people here, no need to bow. No need to be polite, you and I know each other, and I'm not the kind of person who pays attention to etiquette. Practice. No one else? Hua Tuo couldn't help but sigh softly, saying he didn't care. This terrifying pressure swept across the entire Four Seasons garden. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the God-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 269. Visions abound. Hua Tuo next to him couldn't help but look pale. In this small garden, there are so many plants that have become monsters. The most surprising thing is the creation tree with some spiritual intelligence. It immediately put away its pressure and shivered like a frightened little quail. The creation derivative tree never expected that there would be many such terrifying spirits in this garden. I thought that with its strength, it could dominate the entire garden and become the king. Unexpectedly, as soon as the breath dispersed, several big spirits exploded to suppress it. Lu Jing couldn't help but smile bitterly as he looked at the tree of creation in his palm. You little thing are quite domineering. Now it seems that with your temperament, living in this garden is a bit inappropriate. Under such circumstances, if you force it to be planted here. On the contrary, it will be suppressed by other plant spirits, which is also detrimental to practice. Thinking of this, Lu Jin turned and left. It seems that I still need to find a better place for the creation derivative tree. At this moment, Zhang Ji next to him suddenly spoke. Your Majesty, the Four Seasons garden is now huge in scale, and there are countless rare and exotic flowers in it. I feel it's a bit difficult for me alone. Can your Majesty send some people who are familiar with vegetation? As soon as these words came out, Hua Tuo next to him couldn't understand what Zhang Ji meant. But he didn't dare to speak, and his heart was extremely tangled. Lu Jing glanced at Zhang Ji and then at Hua Tuo. In that case, you can find a few people to help you take care of the Four Seasons garden. There is no need to report this matter to me. Just report the manpower information when the time comes. After saying that, Lu Jin dodged and disappeared directly. After receiving Lu Jin's affirmation, Zhang Ji and Hua Tuo's eyes lit up. Facing the place where Lu Jin left, Hua Tuo bowed deeply. After Lu Jin left the Four Seasons garden, he looked at the tree in his hand and felt a little worried. Since the Four Seasons garden is not suitable, where is the right place for this sapling to grow? Just when Lu Jin was confused, the creation derivative tree actually started to sense something. I saw the creation derivative tree running straight towards a piece of land. Before Lu Jin could react, the creation tree actually fell into the soil. Lu Jin looked around and found that many farmers were sowing seeds in patches of fertile soil. Now is the planting season, and what everyone is holding in their hands is spiritual seeds full of vitality. When the spiritual seeds fell, the creation derivative tree immediately released a large amount of spiritual power and began to give birth to these spiritual seeds. I saw one of the farmers had just buried a spiritual seed into the soil. In the blink of an eye, a bud emerged from the soil. At this time, a carriage passed by on the road next to it. A middle-aged man in simple clothes stepped out of the carriage. The middle-aged man got out of the car and happened to see this scene. His eyes widened and he couldn't believe his eyes. The newly planted seeds sprouted so quickly. This is not just what grains can achieve. I have long heard that Jianlong City has thousands of acres of fertile farmland, and its grain varieties are comparable to spiritual plants and fairy seeds. When I saw it today, it is indeed well deserved. The middle-aged man stepped forward happily and found one of the old men who was really sowing seeds. Old man, can you let me see the grains you use? As soon as he finished speaking, the old man threw his hand away. When the surrounding farmers heard this, they couldn't help but cast hostile glances at him. Asking for grain? This middle-aged man is so ignorant. Young man, you are from outside Longhan, right. As long as you are from Long Han, you know that the grains grown in the thousands of acres of fertile land in Qianlong City are Long Han secrets. If you want to get a look at my Long Han secrets, you don't know how to live or die. Who knows? Before the middle-aged man could speak, several young and energetic young men next to him took a step forward. Their tone was particularly unkind. Humph, it's just improved grain. Do you know who we are? Mr. Chen Xiang, let me see, these people are just a bunch of unruly people. When we go to see Emperor Long Han, they must know our identities and treat us respectfully. Oh. Treat each other with respect? Lu Jin smiled faintly, but the young man had a serious tone. Unexpectedly, before Lu Jin could take action, the creation derivative tree took the initiative. A tree root quietly rose from the ground. Before the young men could react, they tripped over tree roots and fell hard to the ground. At this time, Lu Jin stepped forward and used pressure to prevent the creation derivative tree from taking action easily. Although the original intention of creating the tree was just to teach a few people. But Lu Jin looked at these people, they were just warriors. If the creation derivative tree lost control, they would lose their lives. Do you know that this kind of grain can be harvested 4 times a year in Qianlong City, with a yield of 1,000 kilograms per mu, and every kilogram of grain is high-quality spiritual food. And if this kind of grain comes out of Qianlong City, without the spiritual nourishment of Qianlong City, it can still be harvested 4 times a year and produce 1,000 kilograms per mu, but the spiritual energy content will be reduced. You must not be unaware of the importance of such grains. Now, do you still want to see it? At this moment, the middle-aged man realized the importance of this grain. There are actually such grains in Long Han. The middle-aged man couldn't help but look at Lu Jin, who could say such words. Presumably this person's status in the Long Han court must be high. Then, my lord, if Long Han has such grains, why doesn't he promote it to the world and save the people from hunger? Promote the world? Lu Jin chuckled and looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and sneered unceremoniously. Promote the world? How to promote it? What kind of promotion? With good grain seeds, will we be able to grow high-yielding grains? The right time, right place, and right people are both indispensable. People in other countries can live and work in peace and contentment like Long Han, own fertile land, and live a stable life without the disaster of war. Or are the wastelands in other countries like Long Han being opened up into fertile fields, so that everyone has land to farm? Do you really think that Long Han's abundant food and grass is due to this kind of food? As soon as these words came out, the middle-aged man froze in place as if struck by lightning. Yes. Farmers in other countries are far inferior to farmers in Long Han. If the king of Long Han popularizes grain seeds, some people will grow them, but will those farmers have good land? Even if there is fertile farmland, the trouble caused by bandits and wars. Along the way, the middle-aged man saw farmers in Long Han. They don't need to worry about war, because Long Han is at the top of the sky and is invincible. Even after swallowing up 2 great dynasties, other dynasties trembled in fear when they heard Long Han's name, so there was no talk of invasion. As for the bandit troubles, the lords of various cities and territories have already sharpened their swords. Under such circumstances, who would be willing to become a bandit? Lord, spend tens of billions of Krypton gold and sign into the god-level arms. Author, Bathing in the Breeze. Chapter 270. After hearing these words, the middle-aged man opened his eyes wide, and there was a trace of confusion in his eyes. After being stunned for just a moment, the middle-aged man immediately came back to his senses. Listening to your words is better than reading thousands of books. I'm lying. Sir, he has extraordinary bearing and extraordinary insights. He must be a figure in Long Han. My farm owner Su Xing, could you please introduce me to your majesty the Emperor Long Yuan? Meet Emperor Long Yuan? Meet him. Lu Jin looked at the people in front of him. They turned out to be farm boys. But Lu Jin did not reveal his identity and instead asked, "I wonder why you are meeting Emperor Long Yuan. For money, for power, or for something else?" As soon as these words came out, the younger farm boys couldn't say anything for a while. Su Xing also frowned slightly at this moment. That's right. Why did they meet Emperor Long Yuan? Originally, they heard that Long Han had magical grain seeds, and they wanted to ask for the grain seeds to see if they could improve them and spread them throughout the world. But when they came to Qianlong City today, they discovered that Long Han's grains were already extraordinary. Even he, the leader of the farm family, couldn't see the reason. And if it is extended to the whole world, let alone that. What Lu Jin said just now is not unreasonable, even if it gives grain to the people. In the turbulent dynasty, can they farm their land with peace of mind? By that time, I'm afraid the grain seeds will be taken away before they can be sown. Not all places are as safe as Long Han. Thinking of this, Su Xing sighed. It seemed that they were destined to fail. After thinking for a moment, Su Xing looked up at Lu Jin again. The brilliance in his eyes was completely different from before. We want to meet His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor, and we want to find a stable place in the city to carry forward my peasant ideas. If His Majesty Emperor Long Yuan is willing to accommodate my peasant children are willing to share their skills with the public. My farm family still has many valuable experiences that have been passed down to this day. I believe His Majesty Emperor Long Yuan will be very interested in these valuable experiences. As soon as these words came out, Lu Jin touched his chin. That's right. The farm has been passed down to this day and indeed has many valuable experiences. There are 360 lines. If you want to achieve perfection in each line, you need valuable experience to pave the way. So these experiences are precious and priceless. And Lu Jin was not as repulsive to these various schools of thought as Xian Qin was. There seems to be no harm in this choice for me. Thinking of this, Lu Jin looked at Su Xing. In this case, I will report it personally to His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor. I hope you can show your worth. After all, His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor is a person who only focuses on profit. Su Xing looked at the young man in front of him and felt even more certain. The man in front of him must be someone close to Emperor Long Yuan, otherwise he would not have said such words. After explaining the farm children, Lu Jin's eyes fell on the creation derivative tree again. Since the creation derivative tree is willing to take root here, Lu Jin will no longer ask. Lu Jin took out another item from the treasure chest. Fairy Baoquin Stone. Name Xianling Baoquin Stone. Quality colorful holy products. Effect after use, it can be transformed into a spring, giving birth to a steady stream of fairy spring water. Spring water that breeds fairy spirits? Lu Jin took a look at the creation derivative tree and suddenly had an idea in his mind. He came to the area around the creation derivative tree, and as he raised his hand, thousands of acres of fertile land began to change. I saw that the area where the creation derivative tree was located began to rise continuously. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a small hill. Lu Jin landed around the hill and waved his hand again. The edge of the hill began to sink, and a circular ravine appeared. The fairy Baoquin stone was placed in the center, and Lu Jin decisively activated the fairy Baoquin stone. For a time, a large amount of water droplets began to condense on the surface of the fairy spirit Baoquin stone. That young man just now is actually the legendary Emperor Long Yuan. He looked at the fairy spring water flowing in the surrounding ditches and reached out to touch it. I understand, don't worry, this spring water is a sacred thing, and all dirt will be purified automatically. The foot washing water you drink is fine. So that young man just now was an immortal. As a result, he was shocked to find that the calluses and scars on his hands disappeared after being healed by the fairy spring water. The water droplets gathered into streams, and soon the entire ravine was filled. Didn't you hear his tone? This person must be a close confidant of Emperor Long Yuan. His status must be extraordinary, and it's no surprise that he has advanced cultivation. Now that I meet someone like Lu Jin, I feel a little scared when I think back to how rude I was before. Several farm boys were all warriors, and first-level warriors were regarded as otherworldly beings in their eyes. What a fuss! Under the protection of His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor, there are miracles everywhere in our Qianlong city. Su Xing's abnormality quickly attracted the attention of several farm boys. How is this impossible? Su Xing and others, who were standing by the field but had not yet left, naturally saw Lu Jin's methods. The old man took a puff of dry cigarette and glanced at Su Xing and others angrily. Su Xing's face suddenly turned ugly. His Majesty Long Yuan Emperor, since he irrigates spring water into the ditch, it means that his original intention is to use these fairy spring water to irrigate farmland. The entire farmland is nourished by spring water. They touched the fairy spring water one after another, and found that some scars and even calluses on their bodies had disappeared. Old man, this spring water is a sacred thing, but you have abused it like this. Hear the sound and look to the side. I was rude to him just now, but fortunately the immortal didn't blame him. Lu Jin raised his hand again, and streams of spring water began to flow around with the creation derivative tree as the center. Just when they were overjoyed, an old man's voice came from beside them. What you see today is just the tip of the iceberg. But now Lu Jin has already left and disappeared. As a result, Su Xing saw an old man sitting on the edge of the field, his feet soaked in the fairy spring water. You said, this is the fairy spring water that Emperor Long Yuan diverted for you. This kind of method can be regarded as an immortal. He is so young. I saw that the young leaves of those crops that had just sprouted began to become crystal clear after being moistened by the fairy spring water. Several farm boys were angry and annoyed, but they did not dare to take action because of their dignity. At this time, Su Xing discovered the difference between these springs. Su Xing, who was next to him, suddenly reacted and looked in the direction of Lu Jin with wide eyes. After saying that, the old man burst out laughing. Since it is water used to irrigate farmland, why shouldn't I use it to wash my feet?